South China Sea. The discussion here will include the context of the issue, significance of the issue from the point of examination, brief details of the region and the conflict, UNCLOS provisions regarding right of sovereignty, reasons of the dispute, India's involvement, in fact, this is of most significance to us, and finally, conclusion. Look, as we all know, the issue is in news for quite some time. Question is, why so much hue and cry now? If you have been following the newspapers carefully, it was on 12th of July, the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague came out with a judgment on a petition filed by Philippines in 2013. The pronouncement was regarding the claims made by China on some parts of South China Sea, especially on a few islands belonging to the Spartley Islands group. Before we go any further on the issue, let us discuss the significance of the issue from the point of examination. The issue happens to be one of the hottest and has the potential of being asked both in prelims and in mains. However, it seems to be more probable from mains point and has wide-ranging implications for India, both in terms of geopolitics, national security, right to high seas, and energy security. Now, as we were talking on the issue, let's try to analyze the core of the dispute. We all must be remembering that the present system of government in China came in existence after the successful Long March which culminated in 1949. It overthrew the Kuomintang Republican government headed by Chiang Kai-shek. But that Republican government in 1947 for the first time came out with a map named as the 9 dotted lines, which showed nearly 90% of the South China Sea as part of China's sovereign territory. This claim was vehemently opposed by Vietnam and other parties then and there itself. However, since the incumbent government was overthrown within 2 years and the newly formed government didn't give much attention to the issue, nearly everyone forgot about it. In 1974, China under the present regime for the first time started taking action and capturing islands and areas it claimed. This resulted in a standoff between China and Vietnam at first, and then between China on one side and the other nations such as Malaysia, Philippines, Brunei, and of course Vietnam on the other. It might seem strange, but Taiwan also jumped into the dispute, claiming its rights over the territory China claims as its sovereign part. As for the area specifically needing to be mentioned, take note of Spartley Islands Group, Parasols Islands Group, Scarborough Reef, Pratas Islands, Macclesfield Bank, etc. You would get details about these areas from the notes attached below. What is worth mentioning here that China literally fought war with Vietnam and captured certain parts of the Parasols Island in 1974, in which nearly 70 Vietnamese soldiers lost their life. And again in 1989, China and Vietnam had similar kinds of engagements in which again Vietnam came worse off and lost nearly 60 soldiers who were practically butchered and gunned down. Presently, China has established its headquarters of these captured territories on woody islands and is also heavily developing its military assets in the region. Now, if we try to ascertain the sanctity of the claims made by China and other parties on these disputed territories, we have to do the same either based on their historical claims or on the basis of the provisions of UNCLOS. As for the historical claims, these regions have been highly fought over and have changed hands many times. Hence, it is not possible to ascertain the genuinity of claims made on historical perspective. Now, to verify the sanctity of the claims based on the provisions of United Nations Convention on Law of Seas, or UNCLOS as we popularly know it, we have to first study the provisions of UNCLOS. Though these are discussed in details in the notes, yet let us discuss them here as well. UNCLOS allows its members to claim various types of adjoining maritime territory with varying associated rights and privileges, such as territorial seas, a belt of ocean measured seaward up to 12 nautical miles from the baseline of a coastal nation or from seaward side of any islet or islands under its sovereignty. Nations enjoy full rights of sovereignty in their territorial seas, including their economic development and policing. All ships enjoy the right of innocent passage in a nation's territorial sea. Contiguous zone, an area extending seaward from the baseline up to 24 nautical miles in which the coastal nation may exercise control necessary to prevent or punish infringement of its customs, fiscal, immigration, and sanitary laws and regulations that occur within its territory or territorial sea. Most observers hold that all ships and aircrafts enjoy high seas freedom, including overflight in the contiguous zone, although some nations, including China and others, dispute this interpretation. Exclusive economic zone, a resource-related zone adjacent to the territorial sea in which a state has certain sovereign rights, including the right to govern economic development, but not full sovereignty. The EEZ may not extend beyond 200 nautical miles from the nation's baseline. This zone can be claimed from a coastal nation's mainland or from habitable land masses, including islands. Most observers hold that all ships and aircraft enjoy high seas freedom, including overflight in the EEZ, although some nations, of course including China and others, dispute this interpretation. Extended continental shelf. Under certain geological conditions, nations can make claim that extend beyond the 200 nautical mile EEZ to the features that geologists call the continental margin. If accepted by the Commission, on the limits of the continental shelf, nations enjoy the same rights as they do in the EEZ. With the rights and privileges of the various parties involved being clear, let us now try to look into the primary reasons for this conflict more closely. Primary reasons. As for the primary reasons behind the renewed vigor being witnessed in the issue, let us first understand the significance of the area geopolitically. As you can see, this region is the most important sea route connecting Indian Ocean with Pacific. Other way round is too lengthy and would cost many times more. As a result, if on one hand US, Japan, Australia and India are interested in keeping the sea lanes open, China is concerned about the security of its communication channel in importing raw materials from Africa and hydrocarbons from Arabian Peninsula. Hence, sea lane of communication is one reason. The other reason is the prospective source of energy resources. Though the whole of the region could not be surveyed properly, but an estimate drawn from surveys in the peripheral region, it is estimated that the region could have reserves totaling 213 billion barrels of oil and 900 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. Many analysts argue, however, that because much of the northern part of the South China Sea is deep, energy resources may not be exploitable to this scale. Fishing presents another potential source of conflict. The South China Sea is the largest source of fish, an important foodstuff in each of the claimant countries. The fishing industries of each of the disputants include large numbers of vessels, which travel increasingly farther from their home coasts due to overfishing in coastal waters, bringing them into disputed waters. This has led to frequent incidents of harassment of vessels, confiscation of catches and equipment, and sometimes imprisonment of fishermen. India's involvement. India has a long interest in keeping sea lanes open in South China Sea. South China Sea is not only a strategic maritime link between Pacific and Indian Ocean, but also a vital gateway for shipping in East Asia. Almost 55% of India's trade with the Asia-Pacific transits through the South China Sea. Apart from helping secure energy supplies for countries like Japan and Korea, India has the unique distinction of shipping oil from Sakhalin to Mangalore through sea routes of the region. Therefore, it is vital for India to have access to the region. If China continues to assert dominance over these waters, it will be difficult for India to continue with its activities through this channel. India is also engaged in oil extraction and harnessing of energy resources in the region. ONGC Videsh Limited is engaged in extraction of oil from 2 blocks awarded by Vietnam. In fact, New Delhi was a bit taken aback after Beijing denounced plans by an Indian company to develop oil fields in the region. However, during S.M. Krishna's visit to Hanoi on September 15 to 17, 2011, the External Affairs Minister of India underlined that OVL will go ahead with oil and gas exploration in the 2 offshore blocks awarded by Vietnam. It is significant to note that while China is arguing against India's engagement in the region, it insists on building strategic projects in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and on deploying troops there. India, in recent years, has been seen as a credible counterweight to China. Southeast Asian countries, wary of continued Chinese aggression in South China Sea, have encouraged joint maritime exercises with India. In February 2011, the Indian Navy concluded its Milan series of maritime exercises in Andaman and Nicobar Islands, and almost all ASEAN countries participated in the Milan exercise. India has also shown keenness to sell BrahMos missiles to friendly countries, including the neighboring Southeast Asian countries. Most of the ASEAN countries have been engaged in a defense modernization program and would like to obtain assistance in weapons upgradation and systems integration. Like India, most of the Southeast Asian countries also rely on Russia for their defense procurements. India, with its long experience in using Russian products and developed the technological capabilities for low-cost servicing, could be a potential ally for ASEAN in this field. In conclusion, we would like to state that territorial sovereignty disputes cannot be resolved unless the claimant states reach agreement among themselves or consent to refer the dispute to the International Court of Justice or the International Tribunal for Law of Seas or an International Arbitral Tribunal. However, given the sensitivity and complexity of the disputes, this is not likely to happen in the near future. Please look into the PDF provided below to get an idea about the possible questions on this issue. The questions provided are samples only. There can be other types of questions as well on this issue. Thank you.